What's going on, guys? Welcome to the scent bubble. Let's get into it. We're doing a little bit of a pod this week, and for those of you who don't know, I have a fragrance Discord out right now, so make sure you check out the link in the description to join my almost 50 plus member community where we discuss scent of the days, different fragrance topics, recommendations, trades, all that kind of stuff. It's basically a way for me to look and observe the 4,000 plus subscriber community and find the people who are most active, most benefiting from the channel, who want to go deeper than just watching the various videos that I upload and actually are more concerned with the community. It's also a way for me to engage more closely with those of you who have certain requests and things like that. So I bring that up to say there's a section on the Discord where you can request specific episodes. And so last week a subscriber asked about fragrances as it relates to signature scents, and another subscriber asked me to do more house dives. So today's podcast episode for this week is going to be a brief house dive on the house of Diptyque per this subscriber's special request. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the house of Diptyque, and then I'm going to pivot that to a conversation that I think is very relevant to that house and out in general. So I've got my notes here. We're freestyling to an extent because in some ways I'm not the most qualified to talk about this house. I'm not madly in love with this house. I don't have a ton of fragrances from this house. I carry 3, and we'll talk about those soon. But I think I know enough about the house, along with a lot of the research that I've done, to at least bring some information about the house to the public. For those of you who don't know much about the house, I think I've got some cool information for you guys. So I'm going to be skipping around here on my notes, smelling some fragrances, talking about some other concepts outside of that, and we're going to have a good time. I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. So let's look at the origins first of this house. So the origins start in 1961 in France. Diptyque was founded in 61 on 34 Boulevard St.Germain in Paris, and it was founded by 3 individuals. The first guy was a set designer and was from the theater world. I'm not going to say these names. I'm not French. The second guy was a painter, and the third person was an interior / textile designer. And Diptyque originally started as a decor / art / textile shop, which explains why the brand still feels like a lifestyle maison, which is they do things like perfume, candles, and home objects rather than just perfume brands. So do we consider that niche? Not really, because technically niche is brands that only focus on fragrance, but pretty much fragrance, so they're somewhat niche, and conceptually they're definitely niche, which we'll cover in a bit. They started their candles in 1963, so 2 years later they created 3 scented candles: a tea candle, a hawthorn candle, and a cinnamon candle. Oftentimes you'll see them focus on a specific material for their scent baseline that they work around. Diptyque basically helped to make the candle a luxury object, not just a functional thing. And we can see that today. If you ever go out and buy a Diptyque candle, it's very, I don't know if, I think people are used to seeing luxury style candles. I mean, even if they're not luxury, they're still expensive. You know, to get a giant candle these days, you could pay anywhere between $20 to like $150 for a jumbo size candle. And Diptyque is no exception. They make some really beautiful kind of black and white, simplistic, minimal, but there's complexity within the minimal. As you can see with their bottle designs, they're still complex, but quite simple, somewhat. They make some incredible candles, but they wanted to bring a luxury feel to the candle scene, which I imagine in the 60s and 70s was quite simple, you know, all glass, one-tone color, things like that. They brought this level of artistry to the candle space even back then. Their business growth came when they were acquired and went global. So they were acquired in 2005 by Manzanita Capital, the investment group also behind other luxury beauty brands. Some of you nerdy nerds know this company. Most of you don't. That moment matters because Diptyque's international expansion and it led to Diptyque's international expansion and bigger product architecture. So collections, exclusive, annuals, limited editions, and that accelerates in the years after. So what does Diptyque style mean in fragrance today, the brand DNA? So I want to zoom out. Well, we can summarize it now and then go over another section, which I think is highly important. So art first storytelling. The scents feel like scenes. So gardens, paper, temples, coastal air, jazz clubs. Naturalistic scents, but very well composed. So it often smells like the idea of a place or material rather than a loud perfume. It's more artistic. Unisex by default. So even when marketed differently, most of the line wears quite unisex. And the collections represent chapters. So instead of constant flankers, Diptyque builds worlds, and that's what they claim. So for example, if Mont Blanc is executive signature everyday scents, Diptyque is poetic atmospheric scents. They have a buttload of fragrances spanning from the 1960s to the 2020s. I'm looking at probably about over 30 scents, and they have over 100 products in general. I want to switch over to the brand to focus there a little bit. And give me a quick moment here. And then we'll talk about kind of my collection and how I play into this house. So their approach to perfumery. So we'll expand kind of on some of the earlier things. So Diptyque does not design perfumes to smell like, for instance, Blue Fresh, clubby, beast mode scents, compliment monsters. Instead, they design their fragrances to smell like a memory, a place, a single material, and a moment in time. So for instance, they have a fragrance called Philosicos, which is meant to smell like the entirety of a fig tree, you know, the leaves, the trunk, the figs, so the fruit, the air, the atmosphere. You feel like you're standing in front of a complete fig tree. So it's atmospheric and there's layers to it. L'Ombre dans l'eau, which is supposed to smell like a rose bush near black currant leaves. And then Orpheon, which I have here, is meant to smell like a jazz bar in Paris. So they aim for immersion, not performance. And that's a major thing that we'll talk about here. That's the number one thing I noticed when I was introduced to the brand is I felt like these were glorified skin scents. But what separated them from other brands is there was still a really rich, deep complexity and spatial aspect to their perfumery, to where, yeah, you might be a little bit let down due to performance because you're not really used to that, or low projection, but you definitely weren't underwhelmed in terms of complexity. Whether you like the scent or not, these are very well developed scents. And I've even had a theory for years about how there's a certain level of complexity that can be illustrated in lower projection, smaller performing scents, because part of that theory has to do with how top notes and heart notes transition. When you're in a certain window of time, you have an opportunity for more complexity than when you just get to the base. And a lot of people, a lot of perfumers design their scents to where really when you get to that base within an hour or two, that's the scent that is remembered. Whereas with Diptyque, they're really trying to maximize that initial time zone to build up a lot of layer and complexity, and they want the skin scent to kind of retain the atmospheric, spatial, poetic style that it introduced. So it's a really unique approach. It's almost like dialing into a different radio station. It's very close and intimate, but if you get within that frequency, you start to see a lot of beauty and complexity and richness that I feel a lot of your more beast mode or robust, longer longevity scents can't possibly attain. So they're material driven, not trend driven. So Diptyque's perfumers often start with a single raw material like a fig, a rose, a piece of paper, iris, or vetiver, a geographic inspiration, and then a personal memory from the founders. So remember, there's 3 individuals. So they're less interested in following market trends, copying popular design formulas, which we know, oh my gosh, how these brands chase particular formulas and try to do their take on it. I just get so sick of it sometimes. You know, vanilla and cinnamon, citrus on wood, citrus aquatic, you know, kind of a potpourri holiday sweetness. I mean, there's certain DNA structures that just constantly get hit over the head with the same concepts with very little nuance, and that gets so annoying. So going into this house, you're going to be kind of starstruck at the fact that none of their scents smell like stuff that you've smelled before. So that's refreshing. So they're less interested in following market trends, copying popular design formulas, chasing projection hype. I mean, gosh, how much hype is there right now around projection and longevity? You look at all these influencers come out with fragrances, and the first thing they're going to tell you is, this thing lasts forever. It's like, what are you scared of? You know what I mean? It's like, that's an important component to perfumery to a lot of people. But if you just lead with that, then we know that that's what you first and foremost were going after before the artistic side of the approach, but I digress. So they're aiming for naturalistic but still structured scents. We talked about that earlier. Composed with modern structure, carefully balanced, often minimalistic yet rich and complex. They use synthetics intelligently to create. Now this is really interesting. They use synthetics. Everybody's using synthetics first and foremost. So let's just dispel that already. When people say something smells synthetic, what they're trying to say is it smells unnatural, annoying, or cheap. In this case, these folks use synthetics intelligently to create the concept of air, transparency, texture, and realism. It's not raw materials, it's the illusion of raw materials. So that's very important, because I find in a lot of synthetics, the synthetics alone, plus the way the perfumer handled them, there's no balance. And so things become disruptive within a composition that literally ruin it for the formula. So they're gender neutral. You know, they were doing unisex before it was trendy, and now everyone's doing it for money's sake. They were doing it since the 60s. Most of their lines were unisex: Tom Dow, Eau Dwelle, Filosicos, Fleur de Peau, Eau Capital. They design around atmosphere and material, not gender stereotypes. Okay, so concentration philosophy, and this is where we'll transition. This is really interesting. So the whole EDT versus EDP conversation. So when they started the line, most of what they did was all eau de toilette concentration. I carry the black spine sides, which normally this would be transparent, but if it has a black spine, that normally means it's an EDP concentration. And I made sure, because I was chasing performance like a ding-dong, that I got the EDPs. I'm still glad I got the EDPs, but I wish I knew a little bit about the brand before I started just getting performance conscious. So both of the fragrances I have are EDPs. I'm not sure, a subscriber sent me Orpheon, so I'm not sure if it's the original EDT or the EDP, but nonetheless, most of their scents are EDTs, and it's not unless you get a black spined bottle that it comes in eau de parfum concentration, and not all of their scents come in eau de parfum concentration. But I want you to hear the brand's approach to how they think through concentrations, because we think of it as a percentage. You know, eau de toilette 15 to 20, eau de parfum 20 to 30, you know what I mean? And we just think of it as a deeper oil concentration. And we hear this all the time. And this is really challenging to that, that thought process. So Diptyque doesn't treat EDP as stronger beast mode in comparison to their eau de toilettes. So oftentimes their eau de toilette compositions are meant to translate as lighter and more transparent scents, while their EDPs simply communicate a deeper and more textured scent. For example, Tom Dow EDT is an airy sandalwood and Tom Dow EDP is a creamy, denser sandalwood. It's about mood, not about strength. And I found that super fascinating. Let's wrap up on bottle and design, and we'll transition here. So bottle and label design is a part of the fragrance. The oval label isn't just branding. It reflects the founder's love of illustration. I'm just going to have you look at this while I speak. Antique typography, so their typography is just the text. They're doing circular text, wavy text. You know, if you ever used Adobe Photoshop, they're just constantly manipulating the text. Beautiful artwork on the back of this label as well. Just, you know, the mix of glass and plastic and just a real artisan kind of material approach. The original 34 Boulevard St.Germain storefront aesthetic. So this imitates a lot of their initial iconography if you were to go to their storefront in the 60s. And even the bottle weight and glass clarity are part of the experience. Diptyque treats perfume like a collectible art project. And you guys know this. If you've ever seen a Diptyque bottle, they just look phenomenal on a shelf. They look like they've got heritage, rich history, artistic swag, and it looks like it's going to be some elegant juice that you're about to smell. And I couldn't agree more. From the scent to the aesthetic, they do that. They blur the line between home and skin. So Diptyque started in candles, and the reason why is their perfumes often felt atmospheric. Their home scents are as famous as their personal fragrances. So they think in terms of how does this smell fill a room, and how does this smell exist in space, not just how does this project off of skin. And that's a fascinating concept. Okay. Anyways, I'm not going to talk about famous releases and all that. Maybe we'll save that for a part 2 because I already know I've been talking your ear off. Let's talk about a concept here. So I have a couple of scents and then we'll pivot here. So Fleur de Peau is such a beautiful scent. I'm not going to talk much about notes and things like that. But again, somewhat of a low projection. The way it wears on skin is fantastic though. It's got this... And again, there's a fragrance called Papier or whatever. It smells like paper. But this has somewhat of like a soft musky iris or orris and paper-like material to it. It wears quite light on skin. You smell the air around the material. And man, it's an intellectual musk, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? It's got these dainty little beautiful touches of sweetness and then air and then dryness. Feels very French. Feels like an art piece, but it's a skin scent. So if you woke up with a skin scent, this smells, you know, clean, intelligent, unique, and quite pleasant. Like it's a vibe. When people say it's a vibe, because these scents are so atmospheric, it is a literal vibe. It puts you in a headspace of, you know, creativity, an odd sense of peace. It makes you feel important. You know, it's just, you know, a lot of times when you look at a piece of artwork, you know, that's the one thing I loved about art is without words, it could challenge you to feel a type of way or think about something or draw back to a certain memory or headspace in attempts to connect with the piece. And these scents really do function that way as like artwork, but they evoke all the sensories, especially like, you know, mood and your sense of being. Like they're just very much almost spiritual in a way. And then the other fragrance I have outside of Fleur de Peau, which this is the EDP, is just an incredible scent. There's not much like it. It imitates a lot of the Narciso Rodriguez musk type of stuff, Apollonia from Xerjoff, things like that. Just this very atmospheric, airy, paper-like, irisy, soft white flower-ish, musky-like material. Then I have Tempo, which is a approach on patchouli. I'm gonna put a little of that on my arm. And this is just a beautiful patchouli scent. When you look at patchouli today, people are focused on the intimacy, the chocolate velvetyness, you know, one of my favorite fragrances, Straight to Heaven, is, you know, a patchouli, rum, raisin, dried fruits, chocolatey, leathery type of scent. And Patchouli is typically used like that. I think Bulgari Man in Black emphasizes it. You know, there's a lot of great patchouli scents out there, but this one, it has a soft chocolatey-like background to it, but it's just this airy, cold, crisp, clean airness to it. And it's a skin scent, airy, crisp, refreshing, invigorating, intellectual patchouli. You know, it's like if patchouli was sitting, you know, like I have coffee beans right here. It's like if patchouli was sitting in this jar, you know, and a fan was blowing and I was reading a book. I could smell the pages. I could smell the patchouli. There's a little bit of sweetness in the air. Like, it's just, these are almost in some way like artwork in a library. But, you know, again, that's a limited description of fragrances like this, because this could easily be like a date night scent or something like that. Just like a very elegant, like if you were to go have drinks somewhere where everybody's just dressed to the nines, just utter perfection. There's just so much money and intellect in the room. A scent like this would just be so appropriate because it's so prestigious. It's so luxurious. It's so effortlessly elegant. And yet airy and very sure of itself. These fragrances aren't begging for attention, but they demand attention. If somebody comes into your space, you've created an aura, you've changed the channel. You know what I mean? Like, it's just amazing. Again, when I think of patchouli, the Tempo EDP offers me something that nothing in my collection that has patchouli could really offer. And after learning more about the brand, I'm just so blown away now that, you know, I'm excited to dive back into the brand, because I know for a lot of people, I think Diptyque is kind of like the almost Kanye West of perfumery, in that, you know, everybody loves Kanye for something, but most people don't love Kanye overall because he's so unpredictable, you know, and so we connect with him on a certain level, and then he just turns left and goes and does something else. And these scents, I feel most people write off because they just simply don't know how to understand them. It's so out of their realm of normalcy and challenges you to not think of fragrance as gym or work or application, but scents as art, and scents as mood, and scents as storytelling, and scents as a space and an atmosphere. They scratch curiosity. I challenge you to find eau de toilettes or eau de colognes or splashes or EDPs with the level of depth and richness and texture. There's a lot of texture in these scents. And I think if you first spray it, you're going to be looking for, you know, a certain level of lift and projection that you're not going to find. And you have to almost slow down your appetite and tune into a different space to really smell these. But the richness, man, I don't even want to call these skin scents, because they do have a solid, in most cases, 1 to 2 feet of projection. And think about that. Like 1 foot of projection is this, right? It's a scent bubble. 2 feet is like right here. That's a good enough aura. It's like a lot of times when fragrances have a low projection, it's like you get into that projection space and it's still not that rich. It just happens to be that distance of projection and sillage or whatever. But when people finally get into it, they're not super captivated. It just smells good. It smells good. It smells nice. These scents are like, you know, imagine you were, man, Orpheon's nice. That'll be the next one I pick up. But imagine like, I don't want to use it. That's a terrible example. But like, if you were just walking in a room and you smelled poison, you know what I mean? Like, you were in a nice clean room and then there was like poison in the corner of the room. It would just jar you right away and your senses would immediately be turned on. That's kind of how these scents are. Like, yeah, it's only 1 or 2 feet of projection within it, but if you get in that bubble, you just lightly touch it, you're lightly in there, you're immediately captivated by the aura, the richness and depth, the style of perfume, the complete change in atmosphere that you will be in when you enter somebody's presence. And so it's like poison, where it's like if just a little bit touches you, it'll kill you. You know what I'm saying? Like it will completely demand your attention. Now, I don't want to use that to write off and say that, you know, I don't want to make this a conversation about performance in terms of like, well, they're great scents, but they don't perform. I would challenge you to just say, do you have a room in your mind or in your collection for fragrances for very specific applications of intimacy? And I'm not just talking date night. I'm talking being office appropriate, church appropriate, being in your house, a family get together, going and having a lunch, you know, being in an airport, you know, different places where it's inappropriate, for instance, in an airport to just be projecting and sillaging it. It's not really a place you want to show off. It's more of a, you want your aura and bubble to go with you. And if people interact with you, they get that, but you almost don't want to waste the projection and sillage in that type of space. And so I'm curious to see what you guys think through. You know, here's an easy question for you guys. In the comments below, show me an eau de toilette or a low projecting fragrance that you absolutely love. Not one that you wear and it has a lot of good use, but one that actually blows you away, that's low projection. And tell me what the fragrance is and tell me where you wear it. So with that being said, we're going to conclude this episode by talking about some low projection fragrances that I am absolutely in love with, and they do something to my collection that I don't get pretty much anywhere else. So we talked about the fact that I have Tempo EDP, Florida Poe EDP, and Orpheon. I'm not sure if it's EDP or EDT, but it smells absolutely phenomenal. This is like a, you know, it's almost like a clean detergent, but it's got a very Frenchness and complexity within it. It doesn't smell anything like cleaner, but it's just a very clean, complex, intelligent scent. Very philosophical librarian, but rich librarian on the 16th floor of a hotel type of scent. But anyways, let's talk about some scents. Let's move Diptyque over for a second. Let's talk about these. So we'll wrap up right after this. So obviously you guys have seen me talk about this on the Valentine's Day episode. Let me reset my nose here. You know, La Nuit de l'Homme from YSL, an original L'Homme, as being the king of Netflix. There's richness, there's depth, there's complexity, and you'll only get it if you step within a 2-foot radius of somebody. But if you get into it, there's a sweetness, there's a sweet green leafness, there's a beautiful, alluring, you know, low vibration, rich sweetness. You know, it's like the difference between strawberry jam and fresh strawberries. Like if I had a bowl of 100 freshly washed strawberries sitting here, and I had a jar of strawberry jam, you'd probably smell the strawberry jam from where you guys are sitting at the camera from the distance to me. You'd smell the jam first, but if you walked up to the strawberries, you would smell so much more than just a jam. You would smell the air, the green leaves that are on the strawberries. You'd smell the sense that there's a bunch of them. You would smell a real rich but airy and light sweetness. It's just more photoreal, and it translates in the scent profile. Doesn't mean either one is more or less complex, but you have to appreciate this when you have to come closer. Anyways, that's La Nuit de l'Homme. I just absolutely love that. But that's a low projector, low sillage longevity fragrance that sits inside the 4-hour mark, maybe even the 3, and it's just a killer. Like, it just works. You reapply it, you make it last for however long you need it to. But another thing you got to think about is in the intimacy realm, if your girl's right up on you, you can't have a super projective fragrance. She'll get choked out. So that's the super application of a fragrance like L'Homme, is somebody can literally fall asleep in your coat and not get choked out by a fragrance, and yet can enjoy all the benefits of the fragrance. And a lot of sexy fragrances don't do that. They're so projective that you could never stay in somebody's coat for very long. So that's the practical enabler of a fragrance like L'Homme. Let's look at this fragrance, Lalique White. One of the best everyday utility masculine fragrances out there. It takes all the best qualities of masculine fragrances. You know, fresh, clean, green, soapy, linen-y, vetiver, the vetiver richness, the complexiness, the woody, the citrus, right? It takes all the pepperiness. All of those features typically are only featured in one style of fragrance. But with this everyday utility scent, it puts all that complexity. So you get an eau de toilette that's low projecting with a buttload of richness and depth. And yet, it's low projection. So I find that this works amazingly in the office. You don't have to smell simple rocking an EDT. You can have all the richness and depth and contain it within a 1 to 2 foot projection and yet smell nothing like anything that's on the market. This is like an all-star quarterback of all your favorite things you love about clean, fresh scents trapped into one masculine fragrance, and it's highly unique. You don't want this projecting out into the air super crazy. I use that for the office mostly. Oh, amazing scent. Then there's Equus. Lalique Equus, staying with the same house. 3 simple notes: grapefruit, vetiver, and I believe amber? Yeah. The bottle doesn't lie, right? This is Lalique Equus, the horse. Yeah, you get a deep, rich amber, but then there's this simple textural accent of freaking the vetiver complexity. It's amazing how just a splash of vetiver, all of a sudden the fragrance gets all this depth. It's just a deep, rich amber, but it's not like a sweet, airy amber, or like, it's not sweet in the sense of, it's actually quite a savory amber, like a wine reduction style amber, but super airy and crispy, but very warm and radiant. And then just has like a nice vetiver base to make it a little bit more animated and rich. And then it's got this beautiful grapefruit top note. It functions like a Dolce & Gabbana Forever or something, but feels a lot more niche and well balanced. Neither note sticks out more than the other here. It's just balanced to perfection. I wear this as my everyday. It could be a gym scent. It could be a casual errand runner, grocery shopping, where you know you smell good. And if someone's walking next to you in the grocery aisle or something, they're gonna be stopped in their tracks because you just smell invigorating and refreshing. And then another scent, and we'll call it a day, is gonna be Acqua di Parma Fico di Amalfi. Fig done right. Photo real and a little bit animated. Fig here. I don't know all the notes, but I know it's a fig fragrance. This is basically a very almost lush / Bath and Body Works approach to fig behind it. So it's got kind of this almost fig bubble yum background, but there's this super rich sour fig, like almost like it's a fig where it's sweet smelling on the outside, and then you bite into it and it might not yet be ripe. You smell on the outside, it smells sweet, you bite into it, you're like, ooh, that's a little bit of a sour, when you bite into a strawberry and you're like, ooh, that's not quite ripe yet. This is what that's like. It's this nice little sweet fig, but it's got this tart green vibe to it. It's almost like sour green tart fig, good amount of sweetness. And then the backdrop feels like an exotic bubble yum type of experience, but it doesn't smell fake at all. It's super photo real, and it's mouth-watering. I smell this and I feel like I'm about to put a piece of, sour green fig bubble yum into my mouth, and right before I bite into it, I start salivating and gleeking because it's just that succulent of a smell. And yet I get like 2 feet of projection off this sucker. My skin eats this alive. So if I'm wearing this at a Starbucks or something and someone's standing around me, it'll captivate you immediately. It's just so mouth-watering, but it's an intimate style fragrance. If you work at a job and you have a lot of coworkers around and stuff, this is a really interesting style piece. But I think this is just more of an everyday casual that's very captivating, only to people who are worth your time and your presence. But anyways, these are some of the low projectors that I think about that offer me everything from simple to complex, but create different moods and allures. This is alluring. This is deep, rich, complex depth in a simple everyday fragrance. This is simplicity made to feel rich and dense, not necessarily complexity, but complexity in texture, not in scent. And this is fun complexity, fun simplistic complexity that evokes funness and just it's niche, carefree fun. Anyways, guys, so that's some of the things that I think about in terms of looking at the brand of Diptyque and seeing their approach to perfumery. I think we write off eau de colognes and eau de toilettes and all that stuff, and I'm going to show you guys some kind of all-star situations of fragrances that I feel you guys should re-look at and not always chase an Extrait or an Intenso or an EDP or Parfum or Pure Parfum and all this stuff. Some of the EDTs and EDCs that are star-studded and offer a different vibe that fragrances with higher concentrate just don't provide. And I think it's helpful to think through that in terms of how Diptyque approached, you know, the difference between their approach to EDTs and EDPs, you know, richer and deeper, whereas the other one is more transparent. Anyways, guys, I hope that was helpful for you. This was a little bit of discussion on the house of Diptyque. Let me know if you guys have any fragrances from that house or if there's any that you recommend. After hearing a little bit more about them tonight, I definitely realized I want to smell a lot more from the brand because I think they have like 30 fragrances. So with that being said, like, comment, subscribe. More importantly, turn on that notification bell. Talk to me. I do talk back. Join my new Discord server. The link will be in the description below. I'm going to throw some videos on the left and right hand side based off what you've been searching for. Actually, I'll probably link you guys to some more podcasts that we've done so far. But get into the Discord server and let me know if there's anything you guys would like to know, such as a house dive here, because I do reply fast to you know, my supporters. And until next time, I hope you guys stay blessed. Peace.